Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and good day, wherever and what part of the world you're in. Welcome to Where's the Balance?
Welcome, welcome.
Podcast, thoughtcast of two average Canadians that sit around and jabber for an hour, hour and a half, maybe sometimes two, about life in Canada from a Canadian perspective, although we touch on everything. I am your co-host, Rawle, here in Toronto, Canada, and my counterpart, my partner in crime.
Randall Keays. I am in the Princess of the Prairie, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So
the Princess of the Prairies.
just sound eloquent. I mean, I want to stop and just take a musical moment to think. I think it was Bruce Springsteen, if I look far enough back, called Saskatoon the Princess of the Prairies, and it stuck.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a good little tidbit. Well, if you're going to, use that descriptive terms from a geographical standpoint, then I live by the mistake by the lake they used to love to call Toronto. Toronto has many names, but yeah, so I'll use that one for today. The mistake by the lake. But nice. Anyway, man, it's good to see you. It's here we are in September already.
Yes.
So I kind of cut you off because Randall and I, we tend to usually, as soon as we see each other, we greet each other, and we're talking about, when you ask someone, so how you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And the standard answer is, well, there isn't a standard answer. Well, I guess there is. So let's talk, because I'd cut you off. I don't know if you want to pick up. So we were talking about that phrasing. How you doing?
How you doing? And we talked about the standard, right? There is a standard. It's the niceties of conversation, because we over decades, I think, became so uncomfortable with discomfort that we either avoid it or we don't share it, right? I can think back to Rawle, I'm terribly sorry, but some of my grandparents are not much older, right? But I can think back to conversations with my grandparents who you don't share. You don't tell the outside world about your personal problems, your family problems, your somebody in your family is dealing with something. You don't talk about that, right? So like, life is good. Life is busy, right? How you doing? Oh, well, I'm busy. With what, right? Like, well, it's so stops. Or, oh yeah, I hear that. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. Yeah, well, any one of us who has children or a teacher or a professor or college or whatever, right? Like, the last 2 weeks has been pretty hectic across this entire country, right? School started anywhere between the last week of August to the first full week of September, right? Like, if you knew of or had experienced that even at some point in your lifespan, what these 2 weeks look like, right? Back to routine, back to whatever. So if somebody's, I'm busy, like, our immediate's like, oh yeah, I'm familiar. I know what that feels like, or I remember what that feels like. And that seems to be where it stops, right? And so like this week and where we kind of moved into our recording program here, pardon me, is that twice this week, kind of not a self-challenge or self-invitation, but to be authentic to self or accountable to self. Sorry, computer did something funny there. And so when somebody asks me, hey, how's it going? I'm okay. I'm not great, right? It's been pretty hectic trying to figure out how things are going to fit, and lots going on, personal, professional, whatever. But I'm not at the other end of the spectrum either. I feel like I'm kind of right in the middle. I got some things in the air, and I'm doing a bit of a juggling act and trying to just keep it all moving. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
My house is okay. We've got things going on. This is busy, right? But overall, we're in good health. We're in decent spaces. We're like, why is it, and I think, and I started this, right, the don't share with anybody, don't share your problems, don't tell your problems. So why is the nicety always to be, well, I'm good, or I'm busy, or and here's my favorite, and here's true Saskatchewan, well, it's September. Yep, I know, right? So we've got harvest, we've got school, we've got university, we've got work, we've got all these things are happening. But like, Christmas happens every damn year, right? The variables are variables, but like Christmas, it's routine.
Right.
We know this is coming. And so why is it so difficult sometimes? And I mean, you were going into this discomfort or this uncomfortable space that's been building up. And I agree, there's totally that's in the mix, but why is it such a response to like, well, I'm good, when
Mhm.
really you just want to say like, it's pretty shitty right now,
Yeah.
right? Let's not share our
Mm.
problems, but you don't have to go into detail if you don't want to, or if you're not invited to go further in or don't want to open the invitation.
Mhm.
You know, survive and thrive, right? All these other, like, we have some fun trigger words that are going on in our society today, but like, if life is great, great. How you doing? I'm
But
great.
when but when
But
you
like,
ask but when you ask that question, do you think people really want to know how you're doing? Or is it a lazy,
mm,
superficial conversation? Hey, how you doing? I'm good, da, 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 and then you move on. I'm not saying that's what everyone does. I'm just curious because, my thing is most days I'm really good. I got up this morning on the right side of the dirt, so that's a good thing. So a great day is what I choose to do with it. Um, but when I'm not feeling good, I say that. And I find that when I'm not feeling good, I find a lot of times people want to back away from that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
They don't really want to engage in that. Not all, some. And even in your close circle, I'm not just talking about people on the peripherals of your circle, of your
yep,
village. Even the ones inside, they don't really want to know. And you touched on something earlier. You know, at least I grew up in an era, and in my household, it's kind of like, what happens in this house stays in this house kind of mentality. And I think that is still practiced to some degree. And I think,
absolutely.
I think it's probably the same for most people. It comes down to, what you want to share, with those that are
And I
close.
think societal in here. Well, we'll keep bringing Canada into this, right? But societal
Mhm.
stigma, they grew up not being able to say, so they grew up not talking about, and they grew up, right? Like, I mean, our society, whether it's North American, Canadian, just American,
Mhm.
like it kind of just has that same feel kind of everywhere, but at least in my experience, right? So let's keep it to Canada. The stigma but behind not being able to say, or to being able to say what is really going on, or not sharing what's really going on, but just giving enough of a layer to somebody that if life is not all sunshine and daisies today, that's okay.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's not supposed to be sunshine and daisies every day.
No, it's not going to be. And, it's like I agree with what you just said, because it kind of highlights how we're living today. It feels like we
Mhm.
can't talk. We can't talk about serious issues. We can't talk about anything. But then again, it's always been that way. You
Mhm.
know, um, our human nature is what it is. And we live in a day and age now where if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, I'm supposed to believe it's not a duck. So I think that's always been true. We like to think, we kind of glorify the past. We either
Yes.
events that happened that were really treacherous, they're probably, in our memory, they're more treacherous than they actually were. Just like, the so-called good, beautiful experiences were probably
Yep.
not as good and as beautiful as we remember. Or maybe they were the way they remembered them, but it's been a constant in our human nature. As much as we evolve, is evolving in a similar pattern, in the sense that some of us are very open, some of us are not very open. And I think a lot of it has to do with the perspective of how you look at life, how you view life, how you view yourself in life. It also has to do with probably personality. If you're, very much an extrovert, you're more outgoing. But just because you're an extrovert doesn't mean you're going to share. I think a lot of times, my Myers-Briggs indicates I'm an extrovert. Although as I've gotten older, the gap between my extrovert and introverted energies have shrunk. And but I find that today I'm more open than I was when I was younger. Because when I was younger, I cared what people thought more
Mhm.
than I do today. So because I really don't care, if you ask me how I'm doing, I'm going to tell you how I'm doing. This is like with my daughter passing. When I
Yep.
shared that news, some people did, it's like they didn't know how to take it. You get the condolences and so forth, but it's like they don't know how to take it, or it makes them have to think about, well, especially if you're a parent, what if that happens to me? What am I
Yep.
going to do?
Yep.
So
And I
I
mean,
just
if that's the
mhm,
case, right, in the second part of what you said, or the very last part of what you said, if it makes you stop and think as a parent, what if, how if, why, right? Like if all of the who, what, where, hows, and whys played out, great, right? You are not necessarily taking on somebody else's energy in the moment, but you are taking a piece of a life lesson. And what would I do? How could I do? But the missed opportunity that I think in there, right there, is I don't know how that feels. I don't know that experience. Do you care to share more? Do
Yeah.
you care to open up about that, right? And this is that seek, understand, and knowledge component that we've touched on a few different times, that we've just mentioned, you know, through, if you're having a conversation, seek to understand. And yeah, there's going to be some dirt, there's going to be some uncomfortable, there's going to be whatever, but if you can gain some element of knowledge and make it applicable wisdom in your life, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I think too, you know, depending on the circumstance, you know, it's like if you're rushed, and you know, to me, it's like, you know, hey, you know, I'd love to learn more about that. Well, you know, I don't have time. You want to, let's schedule something where we can talk more. I think it's just balance. And I think there's times you're going to want to talk, and other times you're not going to want to talk. There's times you want to listen. You know, there's times I'm constantly being buzzed, and people just assume I'm sitting around doing nothing all day, which probably I am, but but that doesn't mean I want to talk or engage. And I find when I say that, people take it very personally. So, you know, at the end
Well,
of the
yeah, I mean, there's that always on capacity, right? Like, I
well,
mean, this is part of social, this is a part of work, this is a part
yeah,
of even how we're meeting, right? We're
yeah,
always on, or perceived to be always available. But what I think got lost in the big push to professional life, right? So let's talk the last 20, 30 years in our culture. The big push into professional life is, it is okay to stop and take time for yourself, and it is okay to be in a position to say, I don't want to talk, or I'm not in a space for this conversation, or whatever. I hear or understand that you may need me to answer this, but I am not capable of providing you what you're looking for today. I'd like to talk more, right? But I mean, this is back to just an
just not to,
uncomfortable conversation,
yeah,
right? Well, you and I could talk. I mean, you texted me last week and was like, today's not the day.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, you know, you know, I because we spoke Sunday, you know, Randall and I were talking last week. We were supposed to tape this last week, Wednesday, and we were talking on Sunday because in Saskatchewan, they had I guess, a mass murder.
Yeah.
Two brothers went on a rampage, stabbing 28 people. I think 10. I don't know if the number
11.
11 has died, and obviously the
Yeah.
others were, you know, injured to various degrees.
Yeah.
Because I think when we spoke 10, so obviously one person had deceased since we spoke. So it was a heavy time, not just in Saskatchewan, the country felt it, because you know,
Yes.
at least here in Canada, we don't tend to get a lot of mass murders. But you know, this one was different because it wasn't a gun involved.
Hmm.
It was in rural Canada, you know,
Hmm.
and I don't know if they still know why it happened,
And they won't,
and
because
they won't.
he died. He
Both
succumbed
brothers
to,
died or just one?
yeah, no,
Yeah.
both have died.
So both have
The second
gone,
one succumbed after
right?
into custody, but he was already dealing with something. He,
Yeah. And
say,
I
let me,
suspect mental
something had
health
happened.
has something to do with it. I don't know. Nobody, you know, we're not going to know because it doesn't seem like any note was left. Unlike the situation that happened in Phoenix last week, where this young man
Hmm.
went on this shooting rampage and killed 4 people, I believe,
Hmm.
injured a whole bunch of others, and one of them he live streamed. So you know, so for us here in Canada to have that happen, and you know, in our country, it's odd. It's rare because we don't have. It's not like we have net school
Yeah.
shootings, but it's very rare. So you know, it's funny. So we were talking, and you know, I buzzed you because I was concerned about you and your family, and your
Yes.
village, because I know you got people living in rural Saskatchewan. So so that was my concern. I even thought of Jenny and what
Hmm.
was her people going through. So it was an interesting. So come, you know, we were talking. I said, "Oh, we'll have lots to talk about on Wednesday." And when Wednesday came, I got up. I'm just like, you know what? just not feeling this. I don't know if I want to talk about this, and with it being so fresh. And some people go, well, it's probably the ideal time to talk, but I have to follow, the energies and how I was feeling. And when I buzz you, go, yeah, I'm good with that too, because I don't think you were feeling it as well. So
No, well, and not just because it was fresh, and not just because it didn't just rock our province, it rocked the nation for
right.
sure, and all people of this nation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was big, and it was. mm, I don't know, my personal perspective, like to me and to my household. I'm scary is maybe a bit too drastic, but definitely concerning. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was Sunday, and we were headed to Regina from Saskatoon. We went to the Rider game, right? Like, this was all kind of part of the plan. At the football stadium, there was heightened police presence, right? Like, you actually saw full garb, caps and all, and it's like, this is real. This really did happen, and this
Yeah.
is really going on. And there was a lot, just kind of looking even around the area, like it kind of just felt wrong place, wrong time, even on Sunday. But we had already made this commitment. We were going, and the experience was not necessarily for my wife and I, and really for the kids. But looking around the space, and you couldn't even tell from individuals if this was just the thing that they used to put away and pack away what was going on in the day, or to have a mental vacay from it, or let's keep status quo. Because we've also
Mm-hmm.
learned over years, and if Jenny was here, I would love her input. But another individual that I know, who's also a teacher, says, keep your routine the same.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Mm-hmm.
change your routine, the children are affected more higher and usually more deeply, and you want them to feel things, but you also need to be able to just keep the process so that they can work through it instead of being stuck in the
And they
space
feel
as well.
safe. They
Hmm.
feel safe, And this was Labor Day weekend, wasn't it?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I
Sure
know in
was.
Saskatchewan, Labor Day weekend, like in most parts of the country, from a football standpoint, is big rivalry weekend. You got the Argonauts and the Ticats that play, Calgary and Edmonton. You got
Yeah.
Saskatchewan and Winnipeg that
Winnipeg.
play, and
Yes.
gathering at Taylor Field. Well, oops, sorry, Mosaic Field or whatever it's
Mosaic
called now.
Stadium. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the routine, that's your tradition, and you still maintained it, but it was off. It was different
Hmm.
because of
And,
this.
and the concerning, and that's why maybe I use, from a personal perspective, concerning was just, you knew this was going on. You could see this
Mhm,
happening.
mhm,
We didn't know locally, provincially, or nationally where either of the two individuals had ended up, or where they were. There was potential sightings in Regina, just like there kind of was in a few other places.
mhm.
you know even talking with the kids, we parked the car as like, okay, we're walking as a group, we stay as a group,
Yeah,
we three of the four of us have a phone in
everything
the
became
event
more
that, right?
vigilant.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's not that there's a sense of vigilance that comes to that, or doom talk or anything. It was more just about a reminder as to, our cell phone in our pocket isn't necessarily our tool to the world.
Mhm,
It's also our tool to the world, right? But the safety component is that you do have this thing that you don't have to find the nearest payphone, or
mhm.
as a kid, that I grew up, the block parent sticker on the window meant that it was a safe house that could actually, use their
Mhm.
phone or do whatever, right? Like you have that in your pocket. You don't necessarily need that, but you need to know and just going through some of just the standard life safety precautions, if you, when you, how you feel, the environment, the whatever, right? But
Mhm.
have to kind of have that conversation in a vehicle, and then as we get out, and as we're leaving, and it's dark, later in the day, and it's like, walk with the bigger group, pay attention, listen.
Right.
You can talk and still move around, but you need to know what's happening peripherally
Yeah.
around you, and so it was off. And not that that conversation wasn't unnecessary. It was
But you see, to
usually just,
me,
it faces you at the time that, like, this is not the space I want to do this.
it highlights the world we live in and life itself. Kind of going back to how you doing.
Hmm.
You know, I live in a world where there's good, bad, ugly, and beautiful that happens, and I live in a country
Absolutely.
where we don't have, those types of experiences that happen on a regular basis. Compared to the US. Now, having said that, there's a population difference as well. The more people you have, the more exposure you have to the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. So when it happens, we sometimes get too extremist and we think, oh my God, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. No, it's not. And this is why I think, we thinking when you ask people how they're doing, even if they ask me, like I said, most times I'm doing well. But when I'm not, I'm going to also say so. But I'm also going to say so and go, I really don't want to talk about it right now. But maybe we can talk about it in another time or in a couple of days or whatever it is. I think the biggest thing
that's reciprocal, right?
Well, yeah,
and I mean, because you are open and available to say that, and you and I can have that conversation with each other and totally know, yep, nope, we're stopping, or I can press further because I didn't hear a hard end. But I think therein that lies that uncomfortable space too. Do I ask? Do I dig deeper? Do I this? Do I that? Do I share more? Right? Like how, in that conversation style. And I mean, you as a coach, an MBTI, corporate level, all those other things. Obviously, there is some commonalities between all the different personality traits and styles, but there are some very big differences, and the introvert may want to know more, but the extrovert is going to stay super top level because digging deeper means details that they're not going to remember or they're going to get stuck on or whatever, right? Like we know these styles all exist. But why do we stop? Or why is the common theme not to dig deeper? I'm okay. Is everything all right? Is there anything you need? Or do you want to talk more about it? Today is not the day, or today's a great day. If you have time, I'd love to sit down and have a coffee. Why do we miss this?
I think that, it's many things. I think, we'll need, some psychologists to run some tests on this. Maybe they already have, but I think a lot of it too is most people tend to take things personally. So if I dig deeper, if I ask to go deeper, they may not want to. And then, it's like, well, why don't you want to? Or a lot of times people are just asking a question to keep it at a surface level. They don't want to, they don't want to come down, at the 35,000 feet level. Well, how's it going? Well, things are great, blah, blah, blah. And you leave it there as opposed to, well, let's land a plane and talk.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times when, people don't want to, we take it personally. If they want to, you really ask the question, but you didn't really want to go deeply with them.
Right? So then why ask the question?
It's habit now. Like I was saying,
right?
It says habits, like saying, I love you. We say we love you to a lot of people, in the poetry circle that I circumnavigate, everyone say, hey, my brother and sister. And when I say you're my brother, I don't really use that lightly, right? You are my brother and my sister. But I suspect many just say it just to say it. Oh, I love you. Well, okay. But then again, there's nothing wrong with that. This is why, people say, well, it's very hypocritical. Well, hypocrisy is part of our existence. And sometimes you need some hypocrisy because, I don't know, no one does it right all the time. I think the biggest thing is just not to take things personally.
And that's going to be a tough pill to swallow for general populace.
This is why everyone should read Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements and really understand it, because no one gets out of bed in the morning to piss you off. And even if they get out of bed saying they're going to piss you off, they're really not pissing you off in a sense of that's just your perception of what they're doing. And then what they're doing is showing you where they are, who they are, and that sort of thing. So, but having said that, it is not always easy to not take things personally. Why? Because I'm a person, you're a person, and we're going to interact. So there's times we're going to do that. And I think, it's just the way sometimes my mind thinks. I just wonder why. But at the end of the day, we're humans having all these different experiences, which are very similar. But the difference is our perceptions of them. This morning I was scouring the newsreel, all the difference to see what the top story is. And of course, the top story is about Queen Elizabeth passing and the funeral that's coming in on Monday. It's her funeral, so it's going to be
the 19th,
federal holiday for Canada, and I guess it's going to be a federal holiday from here on in. It was interesting. And, so I'm looking at trying to find the differences, not differences, the top news line. So, global, CBC, CTV, the National, all of them. Top stories, obviously the Queen, and that links to King Charles now and all that. Here in Toronto, we had a police shooting a couple of days ago. A police officer died, and this man went on a rampage and killed one police officer, injured a couple others. I'm not sure if anyone else died. I don't like ever hearing any police officer losing their life, particularly in the line of duty. So that was a top story here in Toronto or in Ontario. What's his name? Poilievre.
Yep.
Under conservative leadership. Mm-hmm. So that got a little quarter-inch headline in some of them. I saw a headline that said some Indigenous circles have concerns with regards to the new king and around reconciliation. The Star talked about the Bank of Canada replying to inflation and recession and having to maybe bump up the rates. That's really going to affect or bring in recession even harder. And then from international standpoint, again, everything was Queen Elizabeth, but there was a mention of Biden celebrating their new inflation pact, which was supposed to bring down inflation, which is, I think, just going to make it even worse. Oh my God. Well, inflation has come down maybe not even 2 percentage points, a tenth of a point is come to like 8.1 or 8.3 from 8.5. Prices are still going up. So, to celebrate that, though, no, it's to me, it's nothing to celebrate because people are still struggling. But while I was doing that, I was looking to see what sort of coverage that incident in Saskatchewan got south of the border. Very little. Mm-hmm. Very little, almost non-existent that I could find. And it made me wonder, because whenever there's a mass shooting in the States, we're flooded with it. And not just from the American news stations or the border stations, our own, right? So it's like, it just goes to show you how heavily influenced we are by American news, right? That affects every aspect of our lives. Mm-hmm. I didn't hear anyone calling, should we be banning knives now? Right? Every time there's a mass shooting, we got to get the guns. We have to get the guns. Well, should we be going after knives now? So it's just a very interesting thing. And then, there's mention of the Ukraine and the war in Ukraine, which to me is another proxy war, to be honest with you, and all these things that are going on. So, but the top story and the top news lines and the top quarter-inch, bylines all revolved around the Queen passing, right? And I find it very interesting. I am not a supporter of any monarchy on this planet at all. I think in this day and age, we don't need to be doing that anymore. That's just my personal belief, right?
I suspect within the next 40 to 50 years, it'll be non-existent anyway. I mean, they're really just figureheads at this point.
Well, yeah, most of them. They don't really have any power. There's no political power.
Right. When I speak of that, I mean, I'm speaking specifically of the United Kingdom. But yes, there is still kings and queens in Denmark and other countries as well. Right.
Monarchy. Yep. Yeah, there's something. I don't know if any African nations have. I'll have to check. But the thing about it, I don't agree with it. I don't support it. But I did like Elizabeth. She seemed genuine. From what I saw, 70 years in this role, she didn't choose it. She was born into it.
Well, and not just born into it, but she was not intended to be it, right? It was all thanks to her uncle and his choice to marry an American actress that transferred everything, right? Yeah. So you mean, although, yes, she would have been a working royal, right? And they speak to what working royals are. Duke and Duchess of Kent, stuff like that, right? Like individuals who are cousins or extensions of her family were working royals, right? But she was only ever to be a working royal. That was
Yeah.
it was never intent that and then, I mean, being the firstborn, being a daughter, and in a time where it was still very heavily influenced on male, right?
Mhm.
King power, right? Queens. I mean, we saw it exist in places like Cleopatra and whatnot, but it was not the common theme. So I think between, 1926 and let's see, go with 96, there would have been a lot of things that she would have had to deal with as a female in
Oh, for
power.
sure. Yeah. I
And
mean,
and and
she
what
probably
I
had it easier. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sure, and what I really, really enjoyed, I mean, I liked her as well. To be honest, this next, I mean, we'll probably see the funeral for King Charles, as that's the name that he kept to be stylized by. William will probably be the last monarch I will ever see. Right, he and I are very, very close in age, a little bit older than me, but we're very close in age. He's likely the last one I'll ever see. Longevity lives in that family; they do not die young.
Mhm.
Um, but she trained and worked with her own horses. She had the dog. She did yard work. She was never afraid to get her
Oh, she was
fingers
involved
dirty.
heavily in
She did
World War
she was a
II.
freaking mechanic.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Right, I remember, and I mean, they touch on it a little bit in
she was a working queen.
she was,
She was a
yes. I
working
mean, a
queen.
vehicle broke down in their Saharan visit, and they didn't know how to fix it, and she popped the hood and she fixed it. She was a working queen. You know what? And for that, I definitely,
Oh no, yeah,
she
I have
held
a
some
lot
good
of respect
good.
for her.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. My mom loves her. My mom was here when she passed because I got up that morning and turned on my different news things to catch up on the day and see what's going on,
Hmm.
the madness of the world. And the news was, people, families flocking to the castle in Scotland and bringing in medical, attention, that sort of thing. And I'm thinking, is either she's gone or she's on her way out. Because by the time
Well,
we
and
got the news, she probably might have already passed. But my thought was, and then when it hit, yeah, my mom I think watched coverage all day, and we were talking about it because I come from an island that the British Isle governed or
yep.
conquered. I heard a variety of different opinions on her passing. Most of them positive, but I heard some negativity. I heard one person goes, "Oh, you know, something along the line, God spite the queen. The colonizer is dead, and this kind of thing." So it just like you're entitled to your opinion, but man, it's like you don't have to
At
agree
the
with you don't have to agree with her. You don't have to agree with the monarchy, but can you
at
put
the end
that
of the
aside
day,
and look at
somebody's grandmother, somebody's mom,
yeah,
somebody's sister
yeah.
passed
And they're
away. I mean,
talking about
prolific or
Charles.
not.
Well, the way they were talking about Charles, and because the monarchy is not supposed to show emotions and all this stuff. I don't care if he's a 70-year-old man or how he's 72 or 72. I don't care. His mother passed,
Hmm.
not just the
And
queen of
not
England.
that long ago, he was grieving his father
Yes.
and
Well,
those kids and
18
those
months ago or
siblings.
whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
probably one of the reasons she checked out. She was like, oh, Philip gone. What's keeping me here? But it doesn't matter. It's, his mother passed.
Hmm.
You know, at the end of the day, she was his mom. That supersedes being a queen, king,
Yep,
prince, whatever
yep,
it is.
yep.
So, have some compassion from that standpoint. But
Well,
then again,
and here in the pardon me, in the monarch circle, her passing immediately led to her staff person, right? Her what they that person has a name in the American White House too.
or the
Their head
press
staff. I
secretary,
can't. No, yes. Well, not press, but works in the background. Staff doesn't matter. Her
chief of
lead,
staff. Yeah.
yeah, chief of staff. Her chief of staff would have immediately turned to Charles on Charles' arrival because he wasn't there in the moment, right? And if they are in the moment or in the room, it happens then, but they had to wait for his arrival. And as soon as he arrived, the transfer of authority
He
is
was the
immediate.
king.
God save the king.
Yeah.
God save the king changed in a hair of a second.
It's automatic. It's automatic. The
And
moment,
so there is like, I mean, and he knew that driving that distance, he was in London, she's in Scotland. He knew getting there already what the responsibilities were going to be. I mean, he's been living this for a life, and I mean, some of his childhood stories and some of this, things that are about him as a kid were not blessed and beautiful and wonderful. He dealt with things too.
well, that's just it. We think that they have it easy, and they don't. It's just like everyone else. They have lots of good, bad, ugly, and beautiful to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes maybe they have more bad and ugly to go through because of the position, the status, whatever it is. I don't know. I really
So I
don't
mean,
care. I
I
really
knew
don't care. I
no.
care about the humanity of it, and you don't have to, like me. You don't have to agree with monarchy, but can you put that
She
aside?
was a person, and she
She
was a
was a
parent,
person,
and
and she
she's a fellow
seemed to
human.
truly be someone for the people in regards to service. She seemed to really be what she presented. Now, obviously, we're getting a small glimpse of anything, and it's
Of course.
one-sided perspective. That's fine. But at the end of the day, it was a fellow human being that passed. Yeah, was she in the news and blah blah blah? Who cares? And this is kind of going back to our conversation about how you doing. At the end of the day, it's another human being you're interacting with. You don't have to agree with them. You don't even have to like them.
That's right.
But it's another human being, and it's with each other that we have these experiences of good, bad, ugly, and beautiful. It's not
Because
like
we don't live here alone.
we don't live here alone. So it's like, to me, that's the biggest thing what's going on today. And maybe it's always been that way. That discomfort, taking things personally, has to do with, are you good with the human that you are? We always
Yeah.
keep saying, treat others the way you want to be treated. How's that saying really working?
Yeah.
Because look at the way, not all, but look at how we treat each other at times, and especially in these heightened times. So I stopped saying that saying a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I treat others based on what I hold within me. And as good as I feel with me, I could still have contemptuous thoughts. I could still
Absolutely.
feel
But further to that,
eager and
Raw,
vain and all
specific
that
to
stuff.
you
Mhm.
and to me, right? And in my learning and growing up too, you're good with that, but you're also accountable to that.
Well,
Right.
I'm glad you brought up
Right.
that word. I'm glad you brought up that word, accountable. What the hell does that
What
mean
the
today?
frick is accountable?
Yeah, what does that mean? Because I hear it all the time. Politicians use it all the time. People use it time. Business. What does it really mean? I mean, I know what it means, but
Sure.
do we actually practice it?
Terribly.
Do we actually practice it? You know, Politicians love to, we got to hold people accountable. Well, who's holding you accountable? Well, we the people are supposed to hold you accountable. And then when we try to hold you accountable, it doesn't fly.
Oh well,
Look
I
at,
mean, we can take something very, very, very recent, right? I mean, we can look at Aaron O'Toole and be accountable and be accountable and be accountable. But the moment that he met in any form of resistance, the flag swung the other way, right? Like he was a constant waving flag. Oh, the people don't like this. Oh, I'll even change how the whole party platform
yeah,
is designed to make you comfortable.
I love how he wanted to point fingers at Trudeau, but yet, and that's the beauty. People are pointing fingers at doing the same damn things that they're pointing the fingers at. I talk about accountability and transparency. Biden's administration loves to talk accountability and transparency, and I'm like, where's the transparency? Where's the transparency? Here in
And
Canada,
and if
where's
you're
the?
going to be transparent, you have to be good with being vulnerable.
Yes,
Because
yes,
if you're not vulnerable, you can't be transparent because
and
you're
you
not
have to be okay
showing
with,
everything.
and you have to be okay with being attacked and being ridiculed.
Mhm.
Jordan Peterson says, if you really want free speech, you have to be accepting that you're going to be offended,
Mhm.
right? Or if you want not so much even free speech, free thought, to be able to think. And if you're going to share those thoughts, you have to accept you can offend someone, even if you say it in the nicest, gentlest way, because you may be saying it that way, and you probably are saying it that way, but someone hearing it may not hear it that way. Or whatever goodness you're giving may trigger them and they may react that way. But regardless, that's what I
Yep.
was saying.
Yep.
Going back to the Saskatchewan situation, as horrible as it was, it's part of life. And it happens every day. every day. But it's not the norm of every day. It's just part of life. There's so much. One of the reasons the news is the way it is, and because negativity sells. Why? Because we live in a world based on fear, and this is why fear works so well here. We capitalize on it, right? Because there's no money in good things, beautiful things. There's no money in showing random acts of kindness every day, right? Who's going to watch a newscast where it's all good? No one. We want the negative. I was watching Bill Burr. He's a comedian doing a bit on women's livers and the WNBA, the women's basketball. Bill Burr, I love him. He just nails it. He's like, why are you guys always blaming men? Right? He goes, where are all the women livers? It's called the WNBA, Women's National Basketball Association. He goes, I have my own sports to worry about. Why isn't these stadiums packed with women livers? Because they want the same pay that men do. He goes, well, why would you? You're not bringing in the same revenue and all this stuff. But there was some validity to it, right? Because we look at these things and we see that, is it really true? But we accept because someone is standing on a pulpit shouting that somehow they must be right. And particularly when it comes to these social issues, we've gotten to a point, and again, like talking about going back earlier to our conversation, I suspect it's always been this way. We are afraid to speak our minds, particularly around tumultuous issues.
Now, I want to add into that.
No, you cannot.
Oh, I'm not allowed to speak my mind?
This is not where the balance is. This is I am right, and you do as I say.
I'm sorry, Federal Prime Minister. Did you just speak to me? I'm sorry, where's the water box? People kind.
Hey, we don't do that here in Canada. Sorry.
We don't do that here in Canada.
Anyway,
ooh, you can't see me trying to hide. There's some shade out there. There's some shade. Oh hell, I don't even know what I was going to say to that. It's gone. That was fun.
It was a devious plan on my
fun.
part to derail you from whatever. My apologies.
Brother. Oh no, I'm back. Okay. Because I think some of that is there's stigma for sure, but I think there's also this element of typical versus not typical, right? And not typical is fringe, right? Those are the conversations, the people, the things, right? I mean, if we can lump it all into similar one category for this conversation, those are on the outside. They live very outside of the box or just on the edge of the box, and people don't like being on the edge of the box, right? I mean, I love being outside the box because I like to see how I can make the box a different shape or change things or
everybody wants to be
different, but everybody, and I don't want to go like this is sheeple or herd mentality in that sense, but when you find your group, when you find the thing that speaks to you, you drink the whole pail, right? You're drinking the pail and swimming in the pool without having the ability to have that fringe conversation or that fringe environment or invitation to happen. You're completely one-sided and blindsided when the box has to change because it no longer suits the current need, right? And so you talked about fear and playing on fear, and fear sells. Fear is just a feeling. There's an element as to why fear is important in the human brain, right? We're geared for certain things. We are programmed because
fear is a very important part of our existence. Without fear, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
Right.
The saber-toothed tiger would have eaten us all.
Exactly. I mean, the fear of being conquered, the fear of not having control is what drove many of the monarchs of the past to seek power and control and greed and whatever you want to call it. Competition, being out competed. We tend to look at things through a singular, very narrow lens and not sometimes want to expand. So when, that person made the comment, oh, the conqueror is dead or the colonizer is dead. Yeah. England, Britain were one of the big colonizers on this planet. Now, if you step back and you look at the whole picture, what has colonization done? Well, we're living in some of the benefits of colonization.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, that was colonized by the empire, today they're wealthier than the colonizer.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the case when they were colonizing. And when they were colonizing, because we get focused on the harshness of what happened, harshness of people showing up. So how can you discover something when people were already here? That's a mind, that's a perception from this time, not their time, when they were doing what they're doing, when Columbus was doing. Whether Columbus was a nice guy or not, I really don't care. When he was doing what he was doing, the perception was different, right? And you got to remember, England, Britain was colonized by the Romans. The Romans is what gave us England, because they were colonized. People forget this. That's why I said we don't know history. So I don't know if there's a people on this planet that has not gone through colonization. If you go back and trace our history, we're still colonized people. America is the last colonizer, right? When they go someplace, they tend to never leave. That's why you have military bases all over the damn place.
And they raise a flag on every piece of land they touch.
Yes, the Chinese are doing it. The Russians have done it. This is not new.
The Russians have done it, lost it, and done it again.
Many times. So, you know, the Chinese have done it many times. The great Chinese dynasty and all the conquering that they've done. But yet we only look at the negative and we don't stop and look back and go. You know, it's like I was thinking about this last week when people talk about, well, you know, the indigenous ways, and I don't mean native Indians, just the old ways. Well, you know, colonizers took people out of their culture and their practices and their habits and so forth. And I go, when you look back at how they lived or the practices of the old, is that what you would want to be doing today based on what you know? Would you want to be living like that? Most people don't. The ones that are crying, we need to decolonize. I don't see a lineup at Pearson for people wanting to get on a plane and go to some of these so-called places that they just love, or the big push for socialism, right? Like Bernie Sanders pushing socialism and keep preaching how the Scandinavian countries have perfected socialism, even when they're the ones saying we're not socialists.
Scandinavian countries, right, were some of the first countries to invade the UK and invade America.
Exactly.
And take over, right? Like
how many times was the UK invaded and colonized? So
where does the term rape and pillage come from? That was part of Viking invasion.
Yeah. Well, we just glorified Vikings. Games of Thrones and
as an aside, Vikings are pretty damn cool. I don't deny.
Hey, I'm with all warriors from the past, man. Absolutely. I'm down with the samurais and the Vikings and the Zulus.
Yep.
Because they were conquerors as well, but they were warriors, and we have our warriors today. They just come in different forms, but whether the police officers or military, nurses, teachers, frontline people. So it just makes me wonder, what do people really understand? And then when they're saying some of these things, like, how are you doing? What do you really understand? What do you really mean? Is it just an avoidance? Is it just because it's a platitude? I need to be civil? Because if I'm treating others the way I want to be treated, treat others the way you want to be treated, then how do you really want to be treated? Because if you're going to be frivolous and not good intended, then what are you doing? But then again, I accept. I don't always have the best intentions. I don't always have the best thoughts. I can get petty. I'll see someone doing something or achieving something, and the petty thoughts will come in. To me, that's not the problem. The problem is not those thoughts. It's what thoughts do you take from here and put into the world. But before you even take them and put them into the world, what thoughts that just show up are you adding to your internal dialogue that ruminates and goes around that hamster wheel that you feel you need to put into the world? But once again, it's a reflection of who you are. Yeah. Right? So
I need half a minute. Keep talking, man. I need half a minute.
Yeah. Well, it's just all this rhetoric around what are we doing and how we're doing it, who we are. Um, we need to end this, or down with the colonizers, and good for the queen for dying, and all this. It's like, what are we really showing the world about ourselves? So I find it very interesting that we're living in this time where we feel that what we're doing and going through is unique, and it just keeps highlighting the more we're doing what we're doing. It's been repeated before. There's nothing really new under the sun. So it's quite an interesting place to be. So here I am, continuing talking to myself, because I'm assuming Randall had to excuse himself for a second. So, but for those of you that are going to be listening, when we post this, what are your thoughts? We really like to get your thoughts on this. If you haven't noticed already, I started a new Facebook page to really highlight where's the balance. Many of you have already joined the Facebook group. I will be doing the same thing with probably Instagram. I'm not sure if I'm going to do TikTok. I kind of do TikTok here and there. It's not something that's still part of my consciousness, but I'd really invite you to drop your comments and what do you think. Last week, Randall and I, I posted a video. Well, Randall and I, and I'm still waiting for Randall's response.
Well,
That's okay. Life happens. But, what does, being inclusive mean, inclusivity mean? And I haven't answered that question yet. I think a couple of people have dropped their comments. I was just saying to the masses while you took off to, we started a new Facebook page for the balance, because it's been kind of just being housed on our own personal page. So I figured it was time to house it somewhere. I'll probably create a Instagram page for it as well. I was saying, I don't know about TikTok. As much as everyone keeps telling me I should do TikTok, I've posted a couple of videos lately, but very sporadically. It's not still part of my consciousness. I don't know what it is. I just feel, I don't necessarily overly feel drawn to TikTok, but I will still put some things up and not worry about it too much. But really inviting people to, I think we've got up to like 71 members now that joined the new Where's the Balance page. I'm inviting my partner in crime to get his circle to join up. But for those that have already joined, to answer that question, because what does it mean to be inclusive? It kind of ties into this conversation, and maybe I'll cut this piece out and post it as the reply to it, because we use these blanket statements. Well, we're inclusive. Really? Are we? We're very welcoming. That's a given. But I think of it, being inclusive this way, and it's the same way with my social media pages. It's an extension of my home, my house. All are welcomed in my house. But if you come into my house and you choose to be disrespectful, I will talk with you about it and try to understand why you're acting that way. And if you continue to be that way, I'll ask you to leave.
You are no longer welcome.
I'm not going to ask you to leave and cancel you and go, don't ever come back here. I'll invite you again. I'll talk to you before I invite you, and then I'll invite you again. And if you come back and you exhibit the same behavior, we have to part. I don't practice blanket inclusivity. To me, that's stupid. That's stupid.
Well, and this reminds me specifically, Rawle, and I just had this conversation. I've had it a few times since it's happened, but it's been very, very recent to have this conversation again. I think back to a educator for my oldest. It was grade 5. And she was really pushing on the, like, everybody has to be friends. We all have to be friends. We all have to be friends. This was the conversation. This is this inclusive kind of, we all have to be friends. And so, of course, as all humans, I watch different interactions happen, and I can pick out just by purely by observation we're not all friends, right?
We're
We
not.
know this. We're not
We're
supposed to
not.
be, because we are
No.
very, very different people. We
Yeah.
find our groups and we find our opposing complement groups
Yeah.
who force us to look at things different, or who we force to look at things different. And you get this really fun banter back and forth, and it just helps enhance your understanding or perception of things, because you see it different, right? So you have your complementaries, and then you have your off complementaries, right? You're the opposing side, but you have good vibe and good conversations. And so we've always taught, and in my house and the way I grew up, I do not have to be friends with everybody. I do not have to be friends with you, and you do not have to be friends with me. What I do ask for and what I do expect from, and I'll have conversations if I see that it's not working this way. I can be cordial. I can work with other people and be respectful. I can apply the niceties. I don't have to like you. But if I'm going to share space with you, or you're going to share space with me, or we're going to work together, whatever it might be, there's an element of respect that does need to apply. I don't have to go for lunch at the same time, or go on coffee, or meet you for drinks after work, whatever. I choose that. But when I am in a space where choice is a lot more limited, it is that respectful component. And I had to go into this tell this teacher, so I don't agree with what you're saying, and here's why I invite you to look at it differently. You work with 50 other people in this building, and that's not including caretakers and whatever. You work hands-on Monday to Friday, 8 to 4, whatever it is, with 50 other people in this building. Can you tell me that you are friends with all of them? Can you tell me? And I'm like, stop, because I don't know if I necessarily need to hear your answer, but your delay of response is ensuring that you are not actually, because you could not clearly say yes. I said, so if you were running a classroom and you were forming small minds that everybody has to be friends and to put your own differences aside and respect everybody for where they're at, we're going to have a bunch of roses in a dry field. Like, this is not how this works, right?
Well, to me, yeah, that's just planting the seed for an utopic existence. That's just nonsense. It doesn't exist. It's not real.
No.
Inclusive, if you swap the word inclusive out with respect, you brought that word up. It's the same thing for me. Respect is earned. It's also given.
And is it, well, because it's a two-way street.
Well, it's a two-way street. It's also given to some degree. And what I mean by that, I respect you're human. I respect you have thoughts and feelings like I do. I respect that you walk this same earth and we're breathing the same air. But you have to earn that as well, based on your deeds, your actions. And if your deeds and actions says to me, you're not respectful, then I'm not going to respect you. Period. Right? I'll still respect you as a human, but I'm not going to respect you as a person, because it's earned. It's not just given blindly. And we use these words like inclusivity blindly, that you're supposed to just accept willingly, regardless of what. All I know is this: if there was a memo that came out tomorrow, email. When was the last time you got a memo?
I think it came on a sheet of paper that was also called a facsimile.
Well, fax is even younger than memo. But if you were to get an email tomorrow stating there was a sex offender moving into your neighborhood, how inclusive do you think those people would
be? Not.
So
not.
I don't want to hear this.
That is.
I don't want to hear this nonsense. That's why I said we live in a world now where if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, I'm supposed to believe it's not a duck. So when we talk inclusivity, when our prime minister loves to use that, what do you really mean? Because going back to your point with the example you use of your child's teacher, I know many people, just my Facebook page alone is, I think I'm close to 5,000 so-called friends. Like, people go, you have a lot of friends. I go, no, I do not.
A lot of acquaintances.
I have a lot of it. And well, not even that. There's many people that are so-called in my Facebook friends that I've never had any interaction. People just like to friend people. I probably used to do it when I was younger. And I rarely ever deny someone's friendship. I'll accept until you show me different. And then if I never hear from you, it's just some people just want to build up their numbers, and I accept that. Of that number, maybe 20 of them were friends, real friends, really friends. And then maybe 100 or so were acquaintances. Maybe 200 of them, or of that, is people I've had some kind of interaction, because, you know, being a coach, football, all the stuff I've done, I've come across a lot of people. But no, not everyone is my friend, and not everyone is designed to be my friend.
Hooray.
And I think when we're telling this to children, we're setting them up for failure. Teaching them, we should teach them about respect and what respect really means and how it looks. And it is given, but it's also earned, and it's mostly earned, because I'll respect you as a person. It's like I said, you're welcome in my house, but if you show me you're not going to be respectful, you're welcome to jump on our pages and leave your comments, sometimes even if they're harsh and hateful. But if you're going to be disrespectful, that's a different story. I will ask you to leave, or I will block you. I have no problems in doing that.
Agreed.
At all. So I practice what I like to think is balanced inclusivity, responsible inclusivity, because this is what I know. If right here in this neighborhood where I live, people got an email saying there was a pedophile moving in, there'd be an uproar.
Well, and so, and this is exactly what I wanted to touch on, as you mentioned, our dear PMJT. Let's practice inclusivity. Let's practice inclusivity. Let's practice inclusivity. And here's my statement: in an environment where we don't eat from a silver spoon, or weren't fed from a silver spoon. And let's see what inclusivity really looks like when you are actually in the field, right? And I use that as we are people working. We are working class. We are showing up. We are regular people. We may live in average neighborhoods. We may live in below average. We may live in above average. We may be house poor and have beautiful vehicles. We may be vehicle poor and have a decent house, right? Like, all of these factors apply to everybody differently. But if I hear, and this comes back to just, you know, personal accountability and corporate responsibility. When I see or hear an organization, and I mean, our Fed government is an organization, let's practice inclusivity, be inclusive. But I know, you know, public dollars pay the bills. Public dollars own the house. Public dollar tells me the silver spoons that exist for certain individuals in our societies, specifically when it comes to public dollars in federal, even a little bit in provincial politics, but in federal politics, you don't typically live in a pretty awful neighborhood. And I know, you know, the lifestyle that his family lived and the lifestyle that he lives now. He's not in a suffering neighborhood by any stretch.
He's definitely a part of the village, but he's lived in the luxury part of the village his whole existence.
He lived on top of the hill. We were down at the bottom.
This is why it'd be interesting to see what Pierre does now that he's a conservative leader and maybe the next prime minister of Canada, depending on how voting goes. Dr. Lewis, who was also running for the leadership, Leslie Lewis. I actually like her maybe a little bit more than Pierre. Former immigrant, parents migrated from Jamaica, educated here, a lawyer, worked on Bay Street. We have a lot in common in that regard. One of the reasons I like her and Pierre is the fact that they have the same concerns that I have as a fellow Canadian and for this country, what's going on with this country. And the inclusive talk, but the inclusive practice of those in power today, particularly talking about our prime minister and the cronies that have drank the JT juice. Because I think Justin Trudeau, maybe if he unzips it, it's Justin Timberlake coming out bringing sexy back, because that's all he seems to really go is on his looks. Because, at least Canada has a really good looking prime minister. I go, yeah, okay, but what's he doing?
That's just the theatrics.
Policies? So I want to see what these, because Pierre, like you, maybe middle class, lower middle class. His parents were, I think his mom was a teacher. His dad was, an office manager or something. If I remember his experience.
He went to college in Western
Yeah,
Canada.
he
He
didn't
spent time in Calgary, right?
he didn't have a silver spoon in his mouth. He comes from working class people, and he seemed to have followed that. And he's he's a young man like you, and he's got a young family, very young family. He seems still very connected. Dr. Lewis is the same thing. Her and her husband, she's a doctor, maybe a little bit more from an economical standpoint above peer in regards to earning potential, whatever, I don't know, but they're working people. They've worked, right?
And I want to preface, or not, I guess this isn't this is post statement. The silver spoon in the mouth is the assumption of the environment that JT lived in and grew up in. We know that there was definitely some higher society. What we're not alluding to and what we've made no statement of, and this isn't like a disclaimer, just so our listeners know and our watchers, good morning, evening, night, and day, we don't know the housing environment he grew up in and what he dealt with, right? This is all this is outside looking in and knowing that they lived a pretty prolific lifestyle.
Well, for me, the silver spoon is the fact that, you grew up in that environment because your father was the prime minister of Canada as well. Your father was the opposition leader at one time, very short time. You've lived in this environment. You understand that when people talk about privilege, that's a privilege, right? And it's not because he's white. That's just a privilege.
Or pretending blackface.
When I look at Dr. Leslie and listening to her, I was watching a really good conversation she had with Jordan Peterson on his podcast. She's privileged, but she's privileged because of what she's done and how she's earned it and what she chooses to do with it. This is why when we use those blanket statements like privilege, we're still coming from just one connotation of race and so forth. And yet Dr.
I'm going to throw another.
Oh, go ahead.
Right. And I'm going to throw in a word that we used before, and you highlighted it: privilege with respect. She knows what she did. She knows where she came from, and she knows what she does and who she does it for. Yes. So there's that working component.
And Pierre talks the same way. I hope the two of them could come together and do something positive now that the conservative leadership has ended. I don't know. I didn't really watch a lot of it because I really don't care, because I figured Pierre was going to win. But I hope, I don't know if there was any nastiness that got to it. I hope these two intelligent people can sit down and go, how do we share common goal and concerns about this country? I have serious concerns about where Canada is headed. And this utopic idea is a dangerous one, because if you really want life to be fair and everyone to think the same way and be able to do the same things, and you're trying to basically control outcome, then you have to control people. You have to control them and how they think, and actually even physically in what they do. That's the only way you're going to get it.
You highlighted a word, and it scares me because I've seen it come up in medical conversations. I've seen it come up in business conversations. We are so outcome focused.
Yes.
What is the outcome of that? What is the outcome of that? What are your numbers? What are your numbers is just another beautiful way to say, what is the outcome?
What is the outcome?
What did you calculate the end to be, right? That it is outcome-based or goal-based thinking. Yes, we can have goals. Yes, we could have an outcome in mind, but we also need to understand that we don't drive the boat alone. We're not here alone, and people are not numbers, right? We are people, and we are going to act outside of the box when we feel necessary.
I prefer to focus on opportunity and not outcomes. To your point, we do have to sometimes, forward think, next strategy thinking. But that's coming back and going, okay, that's a strategy. Being able to use the imagination to see even what hasn't come about yet, but then coming back and going, okay, how do we create the opportunities to potentially bring that about? And knowing that the opportunities may not yield it the way we want it to come out, but the opportunity is key. When you focus on denying opportunities through outcomes, you're going to kill opportunity, and you're going to just basically, we're in a time now where we believe government is here to solve everything. Government is the answer to everything. And I don't put that necessarily at the feet of government. I put that on people.
And I think, and I'm going to use this, and I do use this in my coaching as well, is reverse engineering the goal. What is the lofty thing?
Wow,
What can we do today to
talk
get?
about a corporate term.
Well, and it
Reversing
it, it totally is a
It
corporate
is,
term,
yeah.
but it makes something bite size and it allows for adjustments along the way, right? Not all things are going to work out well. So if we put if the North Star, here, let me bring in some big corporate. If the North Star goal is the government, what do we do today to make that something that's going to work for us, right? And these conversations, these human conversations, the respecting of individuals and being respectful and not necessarily inclusive, all encompassing, a balanced inclusivity. I loved your term on that. And respectful that we all have some element of a common goal. We all live in Canada.
Yes.
We all live in the States, or we all live in whatever country. We all experience some sort of strife. We all experience some sort of bliss. We all experience everything. That is the beauty of our existence. And that utopia is a scary, scary place.
Yeah.
And dystopia is more reality. Yeah. But we don't want absolute anarchy either, because anarchy is far away from dystopia, and utopia is at the opposite end, right?
Actually,
When you and I,
anarchy is very far left.
Mm-hmm.
Anarchy sits in the camp of communism and Marxism, and
Well,
it's even on the other side of that, right? But true anarchy is, I always sum it down this way: live, let live, harm no other. I don't want to get rid of. They don't want government at all. I understand the importance of government. I just think governments have gotten too big and too powerful, but they didn't do it by themselves.
No,
because, like I said, when anything happens, what do people say? What's the government going to do about it? I want less government. I want responsible government that supports responsible citizenship. I think our citizenship has not been responsible for a while because we don't value what we have. We don't value what we've come from, the sacrifices made by many, not just Indigenous, by many that have lived before us, so we can live in this comfort that we live in. I see how other parts of the world live. I don't see anyone rushing to move to Cuba, to Venezuela, to the Philippines, to, not saying the Philippines is socialist, but North Korea, I don't see people lining up to do that. I see people trying to bust through to get into countries like Canada and the US. Mm-hmm. So are they perfect? No, there's no such thing as perfect. There's no such perfect nation on this planet.
So embrace and love the dystopia of your people, of your fellow humans. The reasons we think, feel, act, touch are the same, but how we get to those are different.
And embrace the goodness and the bad and the ugly and the beautiful. And the bad and the ugly helps us to appreciate the good and the beautiful. But the bad and the ugly and the good and the beautiful is not saying that we need to stop and life is perfect. No, we will always strive to make things better. But trying to make things perfect, trying to make things fair, that fits into this utopic thinking. It's not realistic. Life is not fair. Life is what we make of it. But that's the common. I live with a bunch of screaming teenagers, and whenever they're fighting, it's not fair. It's not fair. Well, they're kids, and they're gonna think that way. But geez, how many adults think that way? Life's not fair. And why do we have to work so hard? Well, I don't know. The birds that get up every morning, they're working as well. When a lion pack goes on a hunt, they're working. We are designed to work. We are built to work. This thing about, well, if you're doing what you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. That's a lie. Mm-hmm. That's a lie.
Because guess what?
If you love it,
ask a private business owner if they love every aspect of what they do. That's why we have accountants. Hello. That's why we have coaches. Hello to both of us. That's why we have people, we think about our friend Gene. That's what,
we love what we do, but I don't love every aspect of it.
Because you have to build the business from somewhere and you have to hand it off.
Yeah. And there's times it does feel like work, but I'm okay with that. I just find it, we need to understand not everyone is in the same cycle of life, not in the same place. So when we broad stroke these things, it's very difficult because when I was in my 20s, I was not making much money compared to when I was in my 40s. And they love to use the wealth gap disparity and all this nonsense. Well, who are you talking about? Which group? When? Because, oh, well, these people have more money. Well, are they older? Are they more experienced? Because more than likely you're going to get paid more, as opposed to when you're in your 20s. Now we see some people in their 20s doing really well, but they also work. So, my thing is we need to get past these blanket statements. And this is why I, like I said, going back to Dr. Kelly and then a new conservative leader, Pierre, I want to see what they're going to do. I want to see, he's already been in public office. She's already been in public office. They're both MPs. I think she's already had 2 terms. So they understand how this madness works, I would like to think. It hasn't seemed to jaded them, but that's different when you're the opposition versus one in power, right?
Absolutely.
Abraham Lincoln once said, you want to test a man's character? Don't give him money, give him power.
Give him power. Yep.
So we'll see if and when the conservatives do get into power, what he does. Because I remember when JT was first running and he talked a good talk. And like I said, I didn't vote for him, but I was like, once he got elected and I listened to him that night, his acceptance speech, and I was inspired, I'm not going to lie. But then very quickly I realized, you're not that guy, right?
Yep.
You look like a duck and you quack like a duck.
But you're
trying to tell me you're not a duck, but you are a duck because you're just not doing what you said you were going to do. He talks about accountability. We both come from the corporate world. Well, you're still in it. Transparency and conflict of interest is another big. You use, re-engineering. Conflict of interest is a big one, and that was one of his big rallying cries in his first campaign. He goes, even if it looks like a conflict of interest, you need to walk away from it. And yet here's our prime minister now that has been embroiled in at least 3 that I know of, and it keeps happening. And yet people are not holding him accountable.
Individuals out there that are listening, watching, whatever it is, I invite you to read your Corporations Act for your province, because there is one. If you're in Canada, there is also a Corporations Act for the country, but the one you're going to get access to easily and quickly is the Provincial Corporations Act. Within that, the Not-for-Profit Corporations Act exists because it's a small section of the Corporations Act. Look specifically for conflict of interest. It is a fun topic that exists in both portions of that act. So not unlike your Occupational Health and Safety and Employment Act, they live side by side because there's sections that mix in both. There's reasons for that. It means more reading, which is fun for me. I enjoy the learning component of it, but specifically on this, when we talk about conflict of interest, and I want to save this for the next show because Rawle and I talked about conflict of interest a couple of weeks ago, and it's still on my mind. So we're going to come back to this. But this here is your wrap up for where we're going to go to the next one. When you look at conflict of interest, there are 2 very clear statements that come out of the conflict of interest component of the act, at least in Saskatchewan. If you are aware, you declare. If you are unaware and somebody else is aware, they declare and you accept and immediately remove. The statements are so clear.
Yep.
And that is your conflict of interest in the Corporations Act. That is how corporations are supposed to stay out of it. Things can happen. A good friend of mine and I were having this conversation, and this is why we're going to go into this in the next show. Right? We were having this really good conversation, and she made it clear, right? We were doing some work together, and she said, if I'm ever in a conflict of interest and I do not see my conflict of interest, I 100% expect that somebody's going to point that out. But if somebody doesn't point that out and I missed it, and if it comes back at me later, she's like, I'm going to renege. I'm going to go back and go, wait, this is incorrect. She's like, but she's also going to go to everyone else who could have seen it and say, was this miss? Was this? I did not see it in the moment. And for that, I apologize immediately. I'm going to recuse myself from it, but why was I not called on it?
And that's being accountable and transparent when you do
Absolutely.
that. And before I moved back to Toronto, when I was still in Kelowna, I was asked by the city of Kelowna to be part of the panel that picked the next artists and residents. And I don't know, of the 15 applications, I probably knew all of them because of the works I did in the arts and culture field in Kelowna. Well, one of them was very close to me because personal friends mentored them. And when they asked me, I said, and I saw who was applying for the artist residence program. I made it quite clear, okay, I know every one of these people. And these ones I have a personal relationship because I mentor them. It's not like, we hang out, but they come to me from time to time for guidance and stuff. So I made that quite clear. And I said, do you want me to excuse myself when you're going through their application? And the person said, the manager of the group said, are you accepting money from them in any capacity, or any things that you've done has helped them with this? I go, not at all. Didn't even know they were applying for. She goes, then you're fine. Right. But I wanted it to be crystal clear
100%.
that I wasn't here. And, if and they actually ended up winning it. I had anything to do with that other than what they positioned in their application, what they positioned in their, when we were interviewing them, the 2 times we interviewed them. I made sure my panel members knew that. I went to the manager first, and then before we started, I made sure my panel and everyone said, no, you're good, you're good. So I take it very seriously because I watched it in my corporate days a lot of times where people turned a blind eye, and I probably did at times back in my day, but now I refuse to do that.
Yep. And
I think we need more people to say, hey, you can't just talk it, you have to walk it now. And this is what I want to see from Pierre. I would assume Dr. Kelly is going to have a high position, and she's going to obviously not just be a shadow minister anymore. She's going to be an opposition minister for major portfolios. I want to see what they're going to do, and some of the other members that's going to now make up the conservative caucus. Because to be honest with you, I've not been seeing that from the other parties. I don't want to get rid of government and politics. We need those things. But I want us to get back to a place where we're actually practicing. And maybe we never did, but let's forget about that. What are we doing today, and how are we conducting ourselves as Canadians? And we can't just put it all on politicians. What are we doing? How are we conducting ourselves when we talk about accountability and transparency?
And remove the concept of this is the way it's always been done. This is why I think and act like this. This is whatever. No, this is today and forward. What happened yesterday, 10 years ago, 25 years ago, has impact on today, yes, but it is not the driver of today and the future.
And my thing is
willing to look at it different.
Let's look at the other side of what you just said. Okay, if maybe that's how we always did it. Okay, but is it working?
And have you exercised every option?
And if we are truly intelligent, civilized people, if we know it's not working, then it's upon us to change something and to
notify it.
Yes, and to do it in a democratic way, where we respect. Not everyone's going to get their way. But if we are the greater team, Canada is the team, and our prime minister and the governing bodies, the prime minister is the head coach, and our governing bodies are the coaching staff and on all the support staff that helps the team function, then the team needs to be leading by example, not leading. Well, they're leading by example. The examples they're leading by, I'm not happy with. Having said that, I'm not one here to sit there and go, the Liberals are all bad and Justin's all bad. No, not at all.
I need to stop, refocus, and get back on.
Get back on to governance, and we're not always going to agree. I watched, they're just coming back into session, but I watched a few sessions last term before they all took their summer hiatus. And my God, the attitude in the chamber is appalling.
Disgusting.
It's disgusting. And it's not just federal, Ontario, Saskatchewan. It's like we have lost our ability to argue respectfully. I don't mean to be void of emotions, but to be respectful. The things that members of parliament say to each other, the things some say to the prime, I don't like Justin, but I respect the office that he holds. Why? I'm Canadian, and he represents Canada.
By majority.
Doesn't matter, yeah. But he represents Canada, and I represent, and just like members of parliament, I'm not going to sit there and kiss their ring. So it's like when King Charles was walking around and taking people's condolences, so one woman kissed his ring. I'm like, okay, but that's okay if you want to do that. But I don't think of him that way. But I do respect the position they hold, just like the Premier of Ontario. I'm not a big Doug Ford fan, but I will respect the office that you hold. And it's like, do you guys not respect where you are, the works that you get to do?
And Mr. Speaker of the House, whether you're in the House of Commons or your provincial house, you are the Robert's Rule of Order in this
Yeah.
space. If it is ugly, nasty, dirty, or disgusting, you have the power to stop, stall, and say, let's pull this back a minute
I
and
don't know
look
how
at
much they
this.
actually do that, because it seems to happen right under their noses.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
It seems, and that's the thing. That's a very good point you just brought up. We don't need more laws, my friend. We just actually need to implement the ones that we have. And when you are conducting bad behavior, you should be held accountable. Because you're right, the Speaker of the House has that power.
That is their job.
That's their job. That's why you've been elected. And it's like, why are you not
and when the speaker is not available or something happens, right, there is already, it's like the backup prime minister, or the backup, right, we call them deputies. They're there in case something happens. There is a deputy speaker, and they, in that moment of God save the king because the queen has died, become that space, right?
Yes.
It is immediately transferred of authority. I mean, this is Westminster law here, where we are talking about things that have been established. Our House of Commons is built upon the parliamentary style of the UK, right? This is Great Britain at its finest, and we do a pretty bad
Magna Carta,
job
my
of
friend.
it. Magna Carta.
Well, we could say what the hell we want about colonizers. That was a really good thing that came out of colonization, the Magna Carta and the rule of law that still
governs that
today, and is the foundation to the U.S. Constitution, our constitutions to many democracies around the world. So I'm tired of hearing that nonsense, because we are at a point now, we have been for a while, where we need to live by the rule of law. We are living together, and we're not always going to do the right things. So what are we going to do when we don't do the right things? How are we going to operate? And it's not even when we do something wrong. How are we going to operate in business? Because we're living and congregating, and it's important. You don't have to have the Magna Carta. If you go and you research other civilizations, they still had ways of following processes of laws that they believed in. We act like this is new, and because again, everything is racialized. Well, because it's a white Europeans, blah blah blah, it's wrong. And I want to say F that, because I don't want to swear, because when we put this up, I don't want YouTube to say anything, but it's just downright ridiculous. So to me, I'll bring it back to the people, because we need to wrap this up, because I know you need to go.
Yep. And that's exactly where I was going. This was a very good, not heated, very, very, very well-rounded, balanced. There it is, balanced conversation. We are on episode, God, Rawle, what did we, this is 8? This is 7.
7? 8? I don't know. I lose track.
But we're losing count now. That's a good thing. And
we're coming up to 10, though.
We're coming up into 10. We are thankful for everybody up to this point who has joined us. We are open to feedback, comments, questions, whatever it is you want. Rawle was talking about the Facebook page. Now we have a face. We are not just two regular Joes that live in Canada. We have a page, and we have a new logo and a new brand feel. I love it. It looks great, and I was super excited when it popped up. I'm like, that is it. That is us. We are here. We are Canada. We are in Canada. We are part of this story.
Yeah.
And the very fabric of the world, not just our story.
And the thing I like about our thing is, I've been getting a lot of people from, digital marketers, I guess, or whatever, reaching out. Hey, we can help you grow your YouTube channel, or they jumped on, someone posted on where's the balance, and I actually removed the post, because I don't want that kind of spam nonsense on
it's unnecessary.
You want to reach out to me, that's fine, but we can help you get more YouTube.
You want 10,000 followers by Friday next week.
I don't want that. And I know Randall and I don't. We want to grow this organically, and it's whatever. I don't know what that looks like as far as when you say we want to grow this. All I know is I'm going to keep inviting those in my circle to join, to listen. I don't get bogged down on how many likes we have or how many comments.
None.
At the end of the day, I think you and I are doing this because it's something we want to do, and if others feel there's value to it, they will support it. It's like basic economics 101. If you have something of value, someone will want to pay for it.
Wait, was that a line from Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come.
Something like that.
Was that an economic statement?
Oh,
We
it
just
was
didn't look.
it was to
Oh.
ease his pain. No,
No.
it was to ease yours.
Easy, James Earl. Easy.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, my friend. No, but this is one of the reasons I love this. You know, we talk, we have our opinions, we don't always jive, but at the end of the day, it's just about listening and communicating to understand. And
Absolutely.
hopefully, to me, that's the greatest thing that we can put out, is that we can demonstrate, you know, here's two guys that, you know, maybe culturally are different, grew up differently, different experiences, different whatever. I don't know about different values. I think we all share similar values.
I would agree.
But in how we practice may be different, and the experiences we have are different, and there's the doorbell. But the ability to sit and listen and talk and seek to understand is so important. And that's, to me, the greatest value that we could put out. Invite others to do that in
Absolutely.
their circles. So anyway, my friend,
so this is a wrap up of whatever episode we figured. We're coming up to 10. We will go with that. I am Randall, and I am sitting here with my partner in crime, my co-host, and my thoughtcast brand developer.
And I'm Rawle, and want to say thank you again for joining us, whatever part of the world you're in, whatever part of the country you're in. But ultimately, we're two Canadian dads, two Canadian men that love this country, and we love our fellow Canadians. And we're just saying, hey, let's be proud Canadians, and let's continue, hopefully, heading this ship in the right direction, which is forward. It's not so much right, it's just moving forward. How we move forward, well, that's up to us. So
that's right.
Anyway, we will say thank you for joining us. And this has been Rawle and Randall from
Yes.
Where's the Balance?
Check us out. Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook now. Find us. You will find us. We will feel free to interact. We'll either cover it here or we'll cover it there. Whichever. Doesn't matter. It's been great. Another great time. We will see you guys later.
Peace.
Peace.